You're probably the greatest title of all time. And Rob, you and I were teammates, I guess, for the Blizzard of
Yeah,
'93, that weekend, March 13th and 14th, which is 30 years ago. Can you believe it? I mean,
I know.
I can, and there's so much that's happened in 30 years. On the other hand, doesn't it seem like yesterday?
It does, because I remember, still to this day, that's obviously the biggest storm I've ever been part of. And I've lived it since then, done TV all over the country, covered extreme events for the networks, Fox, CNN. I did some stuff with the hurricane last year with Ian down here. The backdrop behind me is Fort Myers, Florida, where I currently reside. And yeah, there's been a ton of crazy events. You know me, I love extreme weather. And that one still sticks out. I mean, it was like 55 inches. We had the lake effect after the regular snow, but yeah, I still remember it like it was yesterday in some ways.
We had a conversation and we couldn't quite sneak into it with Wayne Mahar, Lee Goldberg, Jim Axelrod, Dave Ryan. Peter Hall joined us too, although Peter was still a senior at Cornell, about to start at Channel 3, going back that long ago. And Lee, who's now been working in New York City for
Yeah.
20 plus years, the only thing he compared to was Superstorm Sandy, which obviously was catastrophic for so many more people because of the density of population and the impact of water. But it's interesting you say that. You still haven't had another storm quite like this one over the last 30 years.
Yeah, that storm, even in a meteorological standpoint, you see it a lot with Peter Hall and the crew now at Channel 3 there, that the weather models sort of became the thing from that storm. And I remember Wayne, I was in St. Martin at the time coming back on a trip, and Wayne would call me. He said, "Rob, this is the storm of century." I said, "Yeah, but how many of those we had, Wayne?" He said, "No, no, no, this is different." And, back then, St. Martin, you didn't have a lot of data. You didn't really know what was going on. And he said, "We're looking at this weather model that's now called the GFS today." And it said 5 days out, there's going to be this historic storm. And it today changed when we use the lingo, the weather models that a lot of people use now on TV. That was really the moment in 1993 that the weather really came into itself using computer models.
Yeah, and in fact, Wayne was talking about exactly the same thing, and not you realize then that they actually could work, that the models that week were in alignment consistently, as you said, in that range of 5 or 6 days out, and even tomorrow night, we have some weather coming in here,
Yeah.
and that, as Peter Hall was explaining in current terms, is a bit divergent still in terms of exact temperature, track of storm, and so on. So it makes it harder to say exactly what's going to happen. But '93, you had the convergence of technology and also the meteorological essence of it that really came together to make it predictable, and then still have that impact, right?
Yeah, we just didn't have the trust in that because it was so new. And I just remember Wayne back in the day, we would hang the clipboards up with the different weather charts and use different colored pencils. And Wayne was so good at that. It was funny because he would come in and he would dissect it for us. We were new guys. We were literally just out of college.
Sure.
And Wayne was a little older than us, but he just had more years on us. He was starting a little younger than we were. And I always remember that. And then when it finally hit, I said, yeah, Wayne was right. He said, this one's going to be something we're going to remember. And not only from, like you said just a minute ago, the technology, but from just a memorable standpoint. I think we were there, Matt, 2.5 days at the station. We were stuck.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Like I remember talking about Friday. We had Paula Gorell, Tom Hoff did their morning show, and you had John and Jackie, John Nicholson, Jackie Robinson anchoring, and Wayne was chief meteorologist. So Friday it was all their gig, with our assignment to be there sometime on Saturday because the storm was going to be percolating by late morning noon. But I also remember Friday, like, I'm coming in early. I wasn't going to wait. It was an excitement that was building towards it. Because of that certainty, we were prepared. And right, from Saturday morning till Monday, at least the dawn on Monday, a good group of us were there almost that whole time. So it really ends up being this memory, and as you point out, fairly early in our careers, that really trumps so many others. I can't remember another example in the 30 years since where we've been essentially snowed in, or emergency has required us to stay in. Even like from the news side, 9/11, obviously the great urgency,
Right.
global impact, scary. but you did go home at night. This was not really even safe for most of us to go home at night. Really pretty unique, wasn't it?
Yeah, I remember they were bringing stuff in for us on snowmobiles, and I remember at some points looking out in the weather center, which I've been there. I think it was sort of in that downstep basement where the sports
Right.
were. It was kind of like a step down. It was sort of like a mini kind of basement type setting, but we had windows up in the corner, and that was really our only way we looked out. And I just remember one time, always remember this moment. I looked out, and the lightning was green and blue. It was like just crazy that we had lightning in this blizzard, but it was different colors. I had never, still to this day, seen that in that moment. And yeah, of course, Lee was going out every hour, and it was getting higher and higher up to him, and we were calling him Lee Mometer, the infamous name we called him there. But
Yeah.
it was fun. I mean, like you said, Matt, we all started out with Dave, Ryan, us three as a crew, and it was just, for us, this was so new. I think I was at the station 7 months at that point. I remember starting in the fall before the hurricane. I mean, the storm. And I would say you're right. Since then, outside of the hurricane hitting here, which went right over us here, that one still is number 2 on my list as far as, giant memorable storms that leave a mark just emotionally and physically on you.
And you have great historical knowledge of weather in central New York. The constant comparison is 93 versus 66.
Yeah.
And we had a little bit of that within our group talk too, that several differences. One, 93 mostly on the weekend, so people could opt to be home, which is safer than having to be out dealing with schools and businesses. 66 was a weekday storm, lasted longer. Even if the snow totals are approximately the same, so much had changed from 66 to 93 in terms of snow removal equipment and capability, the forecasting, and know exactly what you're dealing with. I mean, there was so much change then, and there may be just as much change today. Although maybe not. Maybe that was just a period of any given government entity, whether local, county, state, just having greater capabilities to handle snow than would have happened when we were just about this big back in the 60s. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is there's 2 technologies. One is, like we mentioned, getting the weather models and leaning on them and actually believing them. So that was the other technology is, and I deal a lot with snowplow companies. That's what my company does now on the private side. The Weather Pros is to remove it. I mean, what a difference. 66, the trucks, they didn't have even the liquids, the salt, the things,
Right.
It was a very different era to move snow versus 93. And even today, we work with them exclusively so much, and the technology has changed. But sometimes some of the forecasting today, and I'll say this, and I know the crew at Channel 3 would agree, sometimes they're over forecast now. And I think some people have also gotten a little more impatient to look a few days out and expect it to be perfect because they want more perfection further out, and we're not there yet.
Yeah.
So those models were a little more pure than I think they were today. If you look at that standpoint, I think some of these models have so much data, they overanalyze, and the public, when they see a snowflake, and Peter and the crew will tell you, you're a little hesitant sometimes to put a flake more than 5 days out, because then people lock that in and they go, oh, well, such and such said 5 days from now we're going to get 5 inches, and then that's all they remember. And it's still tough. It is still tough. And this winter's been a very tough forecast for central New York. From a weather standpoint, behind the scenes, we do, like I said, we do a lot of weather with the guys that plow Destiny and stuff. And it's just been a La Nina, very strange winter in central New York. Again, is way down in snow, where this is probably, I think, the 3rd winter in a row that it's been way down. So yeah, in some ways, there was a little more purity to the models, and the technology was better with removal than it is today. But yes, technology is the word, comparing 66 and 93.
It's interesting you say about that notion of over forecasting, and certainly before Wayne retired from TV here, a year and a half ago, and now Peter is leading our team with that sense of caution that for example, Syracuse.com put a story out, I think yesterday, 9 to 12 inches of snow coming, early this week. Well, there's a nugget of that's true for some people, some places, but Peter was already pulling in the reins, like, I can't say that's going to happen yet, because I am looking at this divergent data, this technology, and it would be wrong for me to go out and say that's what's going to happen without knowing it's going to happen. And now that we're only 24 hours away roughly from from Monday night into Tuesday's forecast, it's come into play a little bit more evenly to say, it's more like 2 to 6, which is a big difference from a foot. So is it fair to say that with greater technology and detail comes really a greater responsibility to have that meteorological background to interpret that?
Absolutely. And I was just at a disaster show in Miami about a week and a half ago. We also do emergency management in a lot of the cities coastal from New York, Boston, down through Miami. And one of the things we're seeing is this industry that I'm in, the sort of the private sector. And Wayne, a lot of people knew, had also his side company that he still works with movie shoots and everything else. One of the things they told us, they said in the next 7 years, this will grow by $4 billion, our industry, because not only of the climate changing, it's the technology and the social media false narrative. Sometimes there's a lot of people going on social media and they look at that one model run, like you just said with Peter. Yes, yesterday it showed 9 to 12. Today it shifted east, and Boston and New York City and Connecticut are more in the mix. We were just updating stuff now. And I think everybody, and this is what Peter's going through, what we do. Everybody now is hesitant to put a big number up quickly because it'll get changed, and everybody publicly only remembers that big number. We can always go up, but everybody seems to get disappointed when you go down because they want the snow days, even though some of them don't exist with the virtual stuff now. So yes, the technology, there's more weather models, there's more to look at, there's more to dissect. They come in faster, they come in sooner, they change more often. So things seem to change more. And I think everybody always seems to focus on the biggest number first, and they get locked in their head. That's all they hear is 9 to 12.
Yeah, let me talk to you a little bit more about 93 again for a minute. In our group discussion, we got talking about that idea that the technology for communicating has changed too. In 1993, our phone in our newsroom was ringing nonstop, and we had people like Rocco Carbone and Mike Kearns and behind the scene producers, Pamela Davis, answering the phone, taking notes, what church is going to be closed, what school is going to be closed Monday morning, what business isn't going to have second or third shift. We have literally a wire machine with the wire spitting out of it with AP alerts about the weather and about statewide, like the thruway closing. We had the emergency broadcast system with that really old looking logo that came up I think about noon Saturday, roughly, like, hey, everybody, this is a big deal. And all we had to communicate back with the world was really television. I mean, broadcast and cable television, no social media, no email, no text, no internet, no cell phones. Yet still, the communication itself really hasn't changed. That we still had to connect with our viewer, with our customer, essentially. It was publicly urgent information. And you know what? For the most part, in our region, everybody was safe and sound because they were getting that information despite not having the benefit of current technology. That's pretty remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's a lot more TV stations, there's a lot more cable, and as in Central New York, in many places, there's the 24-hour news network now. Almost every city through your cable provider has any medium to large city now, including Central New York, as we know, has 24/7 news and weather. So it's all there, but there are many choices, and those many choices come with different forecasts. So it makes it a little tougher to see which one is either your favorite, who do you trust the most. But yeah, the communication today is just phenomenal. I mean, it is very good in many ways than it used to be, and getting a message across very quickly, especially
and specifically, it's more targeted too, I think,
Yes.
Being just broad.
Hyper local. I mean, and this is what this storm is going to be about. It's going to be about elevation. You get on the hill south of Syracuse, that's where you're going to get that 6 Onondaga Hill, down through Tully, Manlius over to where you have elevation. You go into the city and north to the airport, probably the 2 or 3 inches that this may come to. I don't know the exact numbers, I didn't look, but that sounds about right looking at the latest stuff for Central New York. And then you go over to Utica, you got elevation. So this is why when you hear these ranges, it's a lot of times elevation, especially in March. I mean, this is really, like I said, a typical type of storm that happened in 93. Very heavy, wet snow. I don't think we're going to see lake effect really that much behind this. It doesn't have the dynamics and the track that one had. But in March, these are tricky storms because they're heavy and you got to watch even shoveling them. And this has
Yeah,
been a very heavy, wet snow winter.
it has been. And that you just reminded me of another difference between 66 and 93 was that it was a March storm in 93. So the temperatures in the days that followed came up. We were 40, 50, and then interestingly, we actually had flooding issues that spring, as you may recall, too, along Oneida Lake and Beach Road, because of 190 plus inches of snow melting off and filling up streams and lakes. So that was having a March storm when you have 43 inches in one weekend, and then having it melt in about 2 or 3 days. That creates its own set of problems, doesn't it? It's interesting.
Yeah, Montezuma, I think, was an issue out there too.
Yeah.
Off to the west, there was quite a bit of flooding there, and I remember us having the special with it we put together, and the money went to the Red Cross, and we had a lot of fun with that. That was it was kind of our fun at the end of the storm. We just needed some relief, and it was fun putting that together and looking at all the moments that 2.5 days really played out. So.
Well, let's talk about the fun for a second. First, did you jump out from the second floor window?
I did not. I know some people that did. I don't think I took the leap. I don't remember taking the leap, but I know quite a few of us did.
Yeah, I think we know that Rick Masadi and Jim Dates were the ringleaders, and then there's actually a picture, a still image of Jim in the air, and I'm watching, still like with a suit and tie on.
Yeah.
And then I think after I saw 2 people landed safely, I gave it a shot.
I thought somehow the insurance company got a hold of it and got mad at us and said, "What?"
Yeah. Well, let's put it this way: that has not been done in the 30 years.
Yes.
Years.
The leap out the window. Of the
no, leap out the window, and it's not recommended. And we'll have to cut this out if anybody, corporate hears about it.
Yeah.
What about this principle though of this idea of teamwork and working together in broadcasting, and that weekend really typified that, didn't it? Of how everybody pitched in, wanted each other to succeed. It took dedication and commitment just to cover that story in the way that we did. And I think that's part of why it feels so memorable, doesn't it?
Yeah. You have to remember, Matt, Dave, Ryan, you and I, we were the weekend crew. And then you had Wayne, and it was Jackie Robinson, I think, was the anchor with who was
John Nicholson. Yep.
John Nicholson. And you were combining them both because it was a big enough story that your main people had to come in, not only to just give us a break on shifts, we were going wall to wall, which today it's a drop in the hat to go around the coverage, these CNNs and, like you said, the local ones. But to go nonstop was almost unheard of back then of news coverage. You had a 6, you had a noon, I think we had a noon, a 6, and a 10 or 11. You didn't even have the 10 o'clock shows over on the W's. You just had those shows. So you're right, it took the whole station. I mean, that was not just even, just the weekend crew or the morning crew. It took the whole station to put this together because we knew the amount of time we were going to be on the air, 2.5 plus days, sort of like like a telethon type of thing.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. And, Wayne came in, we came in, who was working what shift, who was sleeping where were we getting food from? Things you never think of today. You just, all right, we'll go down the street and get something to eat. But back then, it made it, right. It made the station, I think, a lot closer. I remember the Christmas party the next year, and everybody just felt a little closer because we spent such a period of time together in such a big moment that who knew that was still going to be one of the biggest moments for all of us as far as weather.
I know it really is. And they're actually, if you want to watch the special, it's on YouTube. I don't know if you've watched it in a while. Check it out though. Go to CNYCentral Blizzard 93 or WSTM. It comes up. And there's a great soundbite from Tom Hoff who kind of bookended it. He was Friday morning and he was back in very early Monday morning for that, what was a relatively short morning show compared to what we do now.
Yeah.
And Tom is saying, I was stepping over bodies. You're not sure where people were sleeping, in the building, and being careful not to step on anybody when I was trying to get ready to do the morning show. I mean, such a hilarious perspective